En un 80% de los casos, el consumo de marihuana se ha revelado eficaz en el tratamiento del asma. La marihuana beneficia al 90% de los enfermos de glaucoma, cuya ceguera se debe al aumento de la presión intraocular. La mayoría de los oftalmólogos californianos recomiendan discretamente a sus pacientes el consumo. La marihuana es entre 2 y 3 veces más efectiva que cualquiera de los medicamentos utilizados para disminuir la tensión intraocular. Desde 1975 se sabe que el cannabis reduce considerablemente el tamaño de los tumores, tanto benignos como malignos. Investigadores de la Facultad de Medicina de Virginia han confirmado el resultado de estudios anteriores que demuestran la eficacia antitumoral de la marihuana. Es mucho más eficaz que los fármacos convencionales que les son habitualmente suministrados a pacientes de cáncer o SIDA para controlar las náuseas y los vómitos que les producen las sesiones de quimioterapia, y el mejor tratamiento para muchos tipos de epilepsia.
Dr. Lester Grinspoon, Professor of Psychiatry Emeritus at the Harvard Medical School. I learned that despite my training in medicine and science, I had been brainwashed like just about every other citizen in this country, that marijuana was not only not a dangerous drug, but indeed it was remarkably non-toxic. And I had to revise my view of it. In 1967, my son, Danny, who was then 10 years old, was diagnosed as having acute lymphocytic leukemia. He had terrible nausea and vomiting with each session of cancer chemotherapeutic drugs. My wife and I heard about a young man in Houston, Texas, who had the same problem Danny had. This boy in Houston found that cannabis eliminated that nausea and vomiting altogether. So Danny smoked it 20 minutes before his next session. He had no nausea, no vomiting. He got off the table and said, "Mom, could we get a submarine sandwich on the way home?" And I can tell you that from that time on, for as long as he lived after that, which was about a year and a half, we never had to go through that awful business of his nausea and vomiting. And because the quality of his life was so much better, so was ours. We didn't have to see this suffering. And in fact, it led to the first study of cannabis and nausea and vomiting. Nobody has ever died from cannabis. You cannot find a case in the world that...
En palabras del Medical World News, la marihuana es posiblemente el antiepiléptico más potente conocido hasta el momento. Ha resultado ser una fuente de alivio para la esclerosis múltiple, enfermedad que afecta al sistema nervioso y se caracteriza por debilidad muscular y temblores.
I have multiple sclerosis.
When we first met Greg, his shaking was so severe, he informed us that he would need a few puffs of marijuana in order to participate in the interview. The difference was night and day. What do you say to those that say marijuana needs to be tested and regulated and have the high taken out for pharmaceutical companies to consider it a valuable medicine?
That's a pretty, and I only mean this as a measurement as to how much it is actually a pathetic thing to say. I mean, just look at me. Is it not blatantly obvious that I have just enjoyed however many tokes? I look happy.
Los ácidos cannabidiólicos se pueden utilizar como antibióticos para combatir multitud de enfermedades. Es un analgésico de uso tópico. Hasta 1937, los parches para callos, cataplasmas para fibrosis y ungüentos para músculos estaban hechos con extractos de cannabis. El cannabis disminuye la presión sanguínea, dilata las arterias, reduce la temperatura corporal, por lo que sirve para aliviar el estrés. Es un excelente sustituto de los somníferos químicos para combatir el insomnio. Además, no potencia los efectos del alcohol y carece casi por completo de contraindicaciones. Estimula el apetito, por lo que se ha manifestado como la mejor medicina para tratar la anorexia. Dado que las migrañas son el resultado de la combinación de espasmos arteriales con una hiperrelajación de las venas, los cambios vasculares que produce el cannabis en la cubierta cerebral, las meninges, suelen hacer desaparecer los dolores. Es un buen aliado para quienes tienen que sobrellevar enfermedades como el SIDA.
People do have preformed views which are not based on their own experience but simply what they've heard on the news media, and they haven't really paused to sit down and analyze these views properly.
It's a sign of the madness and the criminal violence of our society that it dictates whether or not we may experience the healing effects of this plant. It is an extraordinary thing to call the consumption of marijuana a crime. It is a victimless crime, if it's a crime at all. An individual alone in his or her own house, sampling a plant which has been with humanity since the beginning of time, for that to be called criminal is insane. We live in an insane society that believes it has a right to patrol even our consciousness. Not only to tell us how to behave out there in public, but to tell us actually what to think and what to experience. And that's the main objection to marijuana by our governments, is the effect that it has on consciousness. And they don't care that it is a fantastic pain reliever, which it is. They don't care about its wonderful medical properties. They just want to stop anybody experiencing these effects on consciousness. And no wonder our society is in such a mess, where we imagine we live in a democracy and yet elect governments that actually have the nerve to tell us what we may and may not experience inside our own heads without doing any harm to others. There is so much hypocrisy, so much humbug in government positions on these matters. Governments know perfectly well that the rules that they have made, the misery that they inflict on people's lives, don't get rid of these problems. If we really want to solve the problem of drugs, we need to open up the whole issue to broad public discussion, and we have to accept and admit that certain plant products, such as these ancient hallucinogens that shamans use, are entirely beneficial in their interaction with the human race. This is what governments are afraid of. They are afraid of a citizenry that is fully conscious. They actually want us to be unconscious. They want us to simply focus on this alert, problem-solving, competitive mentality that makes us good consumers and good competitors in the business place. But they don't want us to explore the majestic and amazing depths of our consciousness, because then we just might start asking questions that would be very uncomfortable for the power company, for the power company, for the power company, for the power company, for the power company.
People do have preformed views which are not based on their own experience but simply what they've heard on the news media, and they haven't really paused to sit down and analyze these views properly.
Si se legalizara la utilización de esta planta, las industrias relacionadas a la comercialización de medicamentos recetados para diversas patologías perderían sus ganancias considerablemente. El lobby farmacéutico, también conocido como el lobby de las drogas o el Big Pharma, se refiere a los representantes de las grandes farmacéuticas en Estados Unidos. Este lobby empresarial presionó alrededor de 1.600 piezas en la legislación entre 1998 y 2004. Y curiosamente, son pocas las personas que tienen noción del increíble poder que poseen. La industria de productos farmacéuticos y de salud se ha gastado más de 800 millones haciendo lobby en el gobierno federal estadounidense y donaciones para las campañas de nivel nacional y estatal en los últimos 7 años. La industria tiene 1.274 lobistas registrados en Washington. Esto le permite promover una legislación que favorece a los fabricantes de medicamentos a expensas de los pacientes. Las grandes inversiones de la industria farmacéutica en Washington, aunque escasos en comparación con los beneficios que obtienen, dieron sus frutos, dando lugar a una serie de leyes favorables en el Capitolio y decenas de miles de millones de dólares en ganancias adicionales. Conscientes de los beneficios de esta planta, esta industria se sintió amenazada y fue un oscuro impulsor de la prohibición de 1937.
My name is Gwen Olson, and I am the author of Confessions of an RX Drug Pusher. I'm a 15-year veteran of the pharmaceutical industry, and I left in the year 2000. And what I would like to do today is I would like to dispel the myth that the pharmaceutical industry is in the business of health and healing. Because in fact, what the pharmaceutical industry is in the business of doing is disease maintenance and symptoms management. They are not in the business to cure cancer, to cure Alzheimer's, to cure heart disease, because if they were, they would be in the business of putting themselves out of business, and that in fact doesn't make sense. I don't want people thinking that I am a conspiracy theorist, because in fact there is no theory behind what I'm telling you. It's all provable. And what I'm saying is provable is that the pharmaceutical industry doesn't want to cure people. You need to understand, specifically when we're talking about psychiatric drugs in particular, that these are drugs that encourage people to remain customers of the pharmaceutical industry. In fact, you will be told if you're given a drug such as an anxiolytic or an antidepressant or an antipsychotic drug that you may be on the drug for the rest of your life. And very frequently people find that they are on the drugs for a very long period of time, if not permanently, because they're almost impossible to get off of. Some of them can have very serious withdrawal symptoms, and most of them can have extremely serious withdrawal symptoms if they're stopped cold turkey, but some people even experience withdrawal symptoms when they try to titrate or they try to eliminate the drug little by little, day after day. So it's really important to understand the motivation behind all of the current maintenance drugs that are on the market. Everybody's saying, you know, the New England Journal just announced that exercise is twice as effective as antidepressants in curing depression. Ask your doctor if getting your butt off the couch is right for you. You know, you're never going to get that kind of good information, fair, balanced information, as long as pharma is funding the major TV stations, the advertising that supports those television stations, the major journals, and all of the advertising that supports the major journals. You just have to be commonsensical people and understand that the pharmaceutical industry makes 5 to 6 times the amount of money as any of the other Fortune 500 companies in the United States of America. They are not going to easily or readily give up that income.
The most profitable industry in the United States is pharmaceutical.
Dollars involved is just staggering.
Could it really be? Has medicine really become that profitable? The fact is it has. In 2005, U.S. prescription drug sales rose 5.4% to $251 billion. And global pharmaceutical sales rose 7% to $602 billion.
Now, why would pharmaceuticals be threatened by a plant? The answer may be as simple as one word: natural. Because a significant amount of research to date has confirmed or suggested that marijuana in its natural state is still the most effective form. Can you imagine a world where you or I wouldn't have to pay for certain medicines?
After dealing with about 10,000 patients over the last 15 years, I would say that over 200 different medical conditions respond favorably to cannabis.
It appears to have benefits that we never ever knew about.
Glaucoma,
epilepsy, muscular dystrophy,
arthritis,
multiple sclerosis,
wasting syndrome,
nausea, chronic pain,
depression, anxiety, hepatitis C, cancer,
chemo,
AIDS patients.
Is there a product out there today that provides as many medical benefits as cannabis?
No.
It remains an unutilized major resource.
The way to riches in the pharmaceutical industry is to have a drug which can be patented.
Cannabis is problematic right from the start because it's a multi-molecule drug.
In 1930, it wasn't possible to patent plants, and that's the reason that pharma never picked up on this, because by synthesizing and owning compounds, that's where the profit motive comes into the pharmaceutical industry.
The patent in the United States lasts for 20 years. Well, you can charge whatever you want at that time, and that's where you make the killing.
There's no money to be made off natural plants. If you can use a natural medicine that you can grow in your own home, which costs pennies to use, you're going to do that.
You need water and dirt. Not only that, you have that plant forever.
Prime motivation behind any drug company is to make money, and as much money as possible.
They're corporations, and corporations, everybody knows, it's like that diffusion of responsibility thing. There's so many people working for corporations that they lose their humanity.
So those are potential customers for these pharmaceutical companies that are not there if they're using a natural plant.
It's unlimited. You grow more, you get more medicine. Pharmaceutical companies don't want you growing your own medicine.
The government supported a small drug company by the name of Unimed to take a synthetic THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, and to put it into capsules to be used as an oral medicine. This became Marinol. This THC in Marinol is exactly the same 21 carbon molecule that's in herbal marijuana. But it's not the same as medical marijuana. It's not a crude mixture of things, and there's no guarantee that you get the same results.
You can make a synthetic delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol in a test tube. It'll have exactly the same number of atoms and the same arrangement, but how in the test tube can you put the electron spins together, the subatomic quirks and quarks, if you like, of that compound, in the same way that a biological enzyme system will put it together. It can't happen.
In the case of a synthetic compound, if it's only an ingredient from the cannabis, they can formulate that as a drug and make a lot more money out of it.
We're confused that if, you keep hearing that there's no scientific proof to medicinal benefits of marijuana, why are there drugs like Marinol on the market?
Why do they even exist?
Well, that's part of this double talk about it. If we take and change it a little bit so you believe it isn't marijuana, then it's okay. It's a great medicine.
They're trying to make marijuana into medicine because it is medicine.
Why did the government actually grow marijuana? I mean, the government has had marijuana programs that existed since the 70s.
It's impossible for me to believe that the government even believes their own propaganda. What I do believe is this, that you can fool some of the people some of the time, and they're doing an excellent job of that.
And for all the claims of these drugs being a more viable medicine because there's no high, we check some of the side effects. For Marinol, dizziness, feelings of exaggerated happiness, drowsiness. Last time I checked, those were signs of getting high. If it is indeed side effects of marijuana that are preventing the pharmaceutical world from accepting marijuana as a viable medicine, then they better start paying more attention to the products they've been marketing for years. Every year, prescription medicines kill over 100,000 people.
The pharmaceutical industry has been excellent at convincing the public that they need their potions. If you watch any kind of commercial for drugs, they're always using the third person. For example, where does a headache come from? It comes from out there somewhere.
Don't sell the steak, sell the sizzle.
How many people in this country alone are addicted to antidepressants? How many people who are on antidepressants really have imbalances, and how many of them just got off of a bad relationship and they're depressed?
It seems to be acceptable to give people something as long as you're wearing a white smock or you've given them a legal prescription. Doesn't matter how deadly the particular drug might be in terms of side effects.
What we call modern medicine is actually alternative medicine because it's highly experimental, it's often dangerous, often toxic, and it kills a lot of people.
To me, it's crazy. There's a lot of stuff out there that'll affect you in different ways.
Look at aspirin, heroin, both invented by Bayer.
I thought heroin came from opium seeds. And
just natural effect of opium, you keep making it more and more concentrated. No, you have to add certain chemicals to it and tweak it a certain way. It doesn't just come from opium itself.
What was heroin made for?
As a cure for morphine addiction and coughs. Heroin, the sedative for coughs.
Pseudoephedrine, that's the main ingredient in methamphetamine, is to cure the cough, the cold. To get a cold, oh, I think I'll do some meth.
When you look at it from a large perspective, like, what's weed?
Even Francis Young, the DEA's own judge, who took medical testimony for over 2 weeks, made this statement. Marijuana, in its natural form, is one of the safest, therapeutically active substances known to man. Yet, despite this, and the ever-mounting number of real-world patient success stories, cannabis remains listed as a Schedule I narcotic. Under that category, marijuana is classified as having no known medical value.